All right, a very good evening to you this 19th day of September 2015. This is KTN Weekend Prime, the point of news. I'm Yvonne Okwara Matole.
My name is John Alanamu. Tonight we've got a great discussion ahead for you. The Kenya National Commission on Human Rights released a damning report on a legacy that seems to be continuing since 2006-2007 actually, if you count the alleged extrajudicial killings perpetrated against the members of the Mungiki sect. The name of the report is The Era of Terror.
That's right.
And in this report they profile the deaths of 25 people and at least 81 people missing. We're going to be talking to George Morara, the Vice Chair of the KNCHR, as well as Tom Kagwe from IPOA, to talk about what recourse the families have if indeed those investigations are being carried out against officers who into the conduct of officers who allegedly perpetrated these acts, and what recourse the officers have if indeed the evidence does not meet the standard of proof necessary.
Okay, and I think what's also important to talk about is the effect that this has on the war on terror. This is something, as KTN on the Inside Story, these are things we have discussed over and over again about just how we're conducting the war on terror and whether indeed enforced disappearances as we know it helps or hurts the war on terror in this country. Something very pivotal, especially with our forces embedded in AMISOM in Somalia. So that should be some interesting discussion. So please do share your feedback with us. This is the hashtag Era of Terror. Do send in your thoughts at KTN News, at John Alanamu, at Yvonne Okwara. Also 22155 is the SMS line, open to you, free of charge. We're asking you your thoughts on that report there. And yes, what do you think the effect that is on the war on terror, and whether the government is actually going to act on this report?
Of course.
But we also have the top stories for you tonight on KTN Weekend Prime.
We'll have to discuss the impeachment of the chief executive of this country.
Already disadvantaged, but will court's impeachment motion against Uhuru succeed?
Kama serikali haitataka kuongea na sisi, basi tutakuwa na lingine ila kwenda kotini ili waweze kuzungumza na sisi kotini.
Defying government's directive, private schools vow to continue teaching. Plus, from the class to the quarry, making sense of the teacher's absence.
Natamani sana kuvaa high heels, lakini siwezi, nilikuwa navaa kitambo.
And beyond the tragedy, survivors of Westgate attack are not looking back.
Thank you for joining us in the program tonight. Our sign language interpreter is Maresha Owiti. Now, the Kenyan opposition is not relenting in its push to initiate President Uhuru Kenyatta's impeachment. Court co-principal Kalonzo Musyoka, taking cognizance of the numerical strength Uhuru's administration has in the National Assembly, said that they will still push through the impeachment motion, and if it fails, their voice and intent would have been heard.
Court claims the ruling administration has plunged the country into an education crisis. This as the opposition plans major rallies in Nairobi in support of the teachers' strike. Samogina begins our coverage tonight.
It is a near admission by the opposition chief that its impeachment motion might fall short of its intention to oust President Uhuru Kenyatta from office.
We have proposed as court, even if they were to use the principle of tyranny of numbers in the National Assembly, I'll tell you what is going to happen. The very fact that the opportunity will have arisen for the people of this country in exercise of what is provided for under the Constitution, we'll have to discuss the impeachment of the chief executive of this country is good enough.
Braving the challenge and smarting from a threat of a collapse of the impeachment motion, Court says it is game on for a head-to-head duel with the Jubilee side once Parliament reopens. The coalition claiming the impeachment vote will separate the sycophants from Democrats.
If, as I say, as Jubilee, kwamba they will come and override it, but the people of this country will have heard. I remember Professor Rashid, he was in Parliament. He was vocal. And even if he never always carried the day, the country listened.
But to underpin the seriousness of its threat, CORD is leaving nothing to chance, even directing for a roll call for those who will support the impeachment cause.
Kaimeni Mosmos, I think he has made so many wrong decisions that it's about time that we reorganized him and the government. Actions that are going on in this republic is the reverse of what the people who wanted education in this country to take us. 4 weeks of school time is irrecoverable.
Institutions that are private have nothing to do with the current teacher strike, and I think the government should take note, if indeed there is still a government in this country.
The coalition has castigated the administration for its knee-jerk reaction of closing schools as a means of dealing with the teachers' strike. CORD claims instead of fixing the problem, the administration is plunging the country into an education crisis.
We are dealing with a national crisis. A government that is clearly acting as if they are jinxed, and I believe they are. Because how can they make such obvious mistakes? Huwezi ukapeleka watoto nyumbani.
And in what the opposition calls solidarity with the striking teachers, a major rally to be addressed by the CORD leadership is set for Nairobi's Uhuru Park come Wednesday next week.
When the president does not obey the law, his own authority is undermined.
Teachers are demanding a 50 to 60 pay rise as ordered by the courts, but the state is non-committal that effecting the order might collapse the economy. Samugina, KTN News.
The Kenya Private Schools Association has threatened to sue the government if it does not rescind an earlier directive for closure of private schools. The association's chair, Peter Ndoro, has said that the private schools are not involved in any pay dispute and would not want to be part of the pay stalemate between public school teachers and their employer. And as Nicholas Ombua now tells us, private schools have vowed to continue with teaching.
Education Ministry's latest decision to have all schools across the country, both public and private, closed has not received a good stack of response, especially from the private school heads. Despite the fact that the decision was reached to bring about equality, it has been received with great hostility.
We have not been on strike. We operated our schools from 31st of August when the term began. For the last 3 weeks we have been in session. We have not had any strike. We don't have a labor dispute with our employees. Yeah, private schools have a different arrangement and a different contract with their parents, and therefore the decision to close these schools is uncalled for, and we are not going to accept it as private sector.
According to the ministry's circulation to media houses, all schools should close by latest Monday 21st September. This is after learning in public schools was paralyzed by the striking teachers. However, the ministry wants the school heads to transfer this term's already paid school fees into the next term.
The discussions about taking fees to the next term, for us as private schools, it does not arise, because we're not going to close our schools until we complete the syllabus as prescribed by our curriculum.
Mungu Baba wetu wa mbinguni.
The Coalition for Reforms and Democracy has not given the government a breathing space over what they refer to as a misguided decision. Some of the CORD leaders have promised to join the teachers on the streets on Wednesday to demand their pay rise.
What business do you have closing private schools? Private schools must continue. They must defy this order. Because the private schools are shaming government. Aga Khan Academy shames the government. The government must build Aga Khan academies, not close them down. 4 weeks of school time is irrecoverable. Our children will never recover the 4 weeks they have been at home in 2015.
The right of the Kenyan children has been aggressed upon, and we are now saying enough is enough.
Sisi tulisema tuwasaidie bure, tukae na walimu, tukae na rais wetu, tukae na waziri wa elimu, tukae na waziri wa fedha, tusikizane. Serikali iseme kweli hii hela ni nyingi, hatuwezi kulipa haraka. Tuulize serikali mnyalohuana singa, ngapi mko nazo?
Despite the Kenya National Examinations Council having launched the 2015 national examinations, what is not yet clear is who will supervise the exams.
We would want the government to defer the exams at least by 2-3 weeks, so that the students can have an ample time for them to revise, have their teachers in place so that they can have this kind of, that's our proposal, and we have made it very clear.
Exams is different from the contract that they have with the Teacher Service Commission. This is Kenya National Examination Council, and therefore we expect teachers both in the public sector and the private sector, who usually supervise, invigilate and mark examinations, will do what they're supposed to do. So we hope that the issue of examinations will not be interrupted.
The Kenya Private Schools Association has threatened to move to court if the government does not make a step of dialogue with the private schools management, citing that they will not close as directed.
Between now and Monday morning, if the government does not engage the private sector in consultation, constructive dialogue, then we'll have no option but to go to court. Because this decision that has been taken by the Ministry of Education is unfair to the private sector, to the children in private schools, proprietors and teachers in those institutions, because they have absolutely nothing to do with this strike.
It will be one of the many lawsuits filed against the government in regards to the teachers' 50 to 60% pay if the Kenya Private Schools Association decides to make a move to the court. However, the government has remained ignorant over the matter with no signs of any light anytime soon. Nicholas Omboa, KTN News.
And as the uncertainty in the education sector continues to bite even harder, students across the country continue to suffer as they miss out on classes. In Isiolo County, some school-going children are now spending their time at a quarry site where they're helping their parents crush stones for sale. Fatma Pole with that story.
They used to go to school, but now these children spend their time here, working in a quarry alongside their older siblings and parents so that they can afford to eat. Crushing stones into ballast, 17 shillings for a bucket of ballast or 300 for a ton is what they are targeting.
In the beni shilingi 17. Hata tuwezi mimi mwenyewe kilo zangu hata ziezinue indebe, lakini juu sina uwezo na beba tu. Sisi hatutaki kuchapa kagoto tena, tutaenda shule. Kwa hivyo Uhuru President tusikililia huruma.
They are not here out of their own will, but with no learning in schools and with all the time at their disposal, this is what they are forced to do. Parents too would rather engage these children in their daily activities rather than leaving them idle. The young ones who are not old enough to work are limited to these cares, and it is on these high cliffs that they play as well, totally oblivious of the danger that lurks around. But to their parents, this is a lesser evil compared to leaving them alone at home. At least here, they say they have their eyes on them.
Hatuna chakula ya kuwapatia, na wanahitaji chakula, wanahitaji kula na wanahitaji kunywa. Tunashindwa sasa, tutawafanya nini?
Wakati watoto wako shuleni, wazazi wanapata nafasi nzuri ya kuwatafutia watoto chakula, na wanapata hata time nzuri ya kuweza kupanga hata vile watoto wataendelea na masomo yao.
But with the pay dispute pitting teachers against the government appearing to be far from over, and no signs of schools reopening anytime soon, the fate of these children remains unknown. They will continue to come here every day, laboring under the scorching sun. This a fair representation of the thousands of children across Kenya who are suffering because their future has been held hostage by the ongoing teachers' strike. Fatma Pole, KTN News.
Kenya Defense Forces troops operating under AMISOM foiled 2 Al-Shabaab attacks in the area of Damasa in Gedo region. In the first incident, KDF troops from Elade to Damasa on normal operation duties encountered an improvised explosive device that exploded by the roadside. The troops were engaged in a firefight with an estimated 20 Al-Shabaab militia, killing 3, while the rest fled. 2 AK-47 rifles, a mobile phone and a radio were recovered after the incident. Separately, in Taraka at about 9:30 this morning, an IED targeting KDF detonated prematurely, killing 1 of the militias. KDF troops disembarked and pursued the militia, killing 2 of them. 3 AK-47 rifles and a mobile phone were recovered from the militia in this second incident. Lastly, KDF troops also found and destroyed the militia's makeshift operation camp. All right, now, for 50 years, Priska Akama has never drunk water or any form of liquid freely. This was after she was diagnosed with vaginal fistula, a condition that deterred her from controlling her bladder. Fred Muturi gives us the story of the widow who lost 4 of her babies after developing the condition, but survived 50 years on to undergo a successful repair at the Kisii Teaching and Referral Hospital.
The 78-year-old woman developed the condition due to a prolonged labor, and for the past 50 years, she underwent humiliation and stigma since she was deemed a social misfit.
Watu wakiniona kanisa wanaeva. Naenda mahali fulani, nyumba ya fulani, mwenyewe aoni mzuri kweli. Anasema huyu anakuja kufanya nini hapa? Sangine haribu geti yangu, geti ya kukaa. Kitu kinamwagika pa. Anamwagika yenyewe.
She joins other women suffering from vaginal fistula and rectovaginal fistula, undergoing free repairs at the hospital in a program that is being sponsored by the Flying Doctors Society of Africa and the Freedom for Fistula Foundation. When her baby got trapped in the birth canal for 5 days, she sought the services of a traditional birth attendant. She got her abdominal palpation checked and the baby was forcefully pulled out. She collapsed only to wake up in an hospital bed. She recalls how painful the process was.
Nakuwa nusuni sana. Saa ile watoto wanakuwa wananiwacha tena na mimi nagonjeka. Sasa nani atanisaidia?
The biggest problem we have is how to prevent the fistulas from forming. And we know in Kenya that over 1,000 new fistulas are being formed every year, and the capacity to handle this number is limited. But however, with the government support, with the participation of our partners, the Freedom from Fistula Foundation, our partners, the Flying Doctor Society, we train the surgeons, we train the nurses so that these fistulas can be encountered much earlier, repaired so that the women don't have to go through stigma.
Nakuja hapa Jumamosi. Naona wamama wengine wanaanza koeva. Ngabauliza nini mbaya? Nani ataenda kutuangalia? Umwangalia nini kama unateseka unapicha? Basi kwa picha daktari.
Another patient is a 12-year-old girl who dropped out of school due to stigma related to the condition. She developed the condition after birth and her parents ran away from her. Jane Nyaboke now lives with a Good Samaritan and hopes that she may go back to school after the repair.
The thing is, once fistula has occurred, management should start immediately.
It was noted that some of the mothers screened were underage girls, including the elderly, and had suffered for several years now while their families broke up because the community lost hope on them.
But if the patients or the clients can arrive early enough in labor and they are monitored properly while in the hospital, then fistula is preventable. Yeah, unfortunately, many of them may come late, and by the time they arrive at the hospital, damage has already happened.
Dr. Wakasiaka also said that the country records at least 1,000 new fistula cases every year. The program targeted 80 women for repair, and so far 40 have gone through screening, and 35 of them have undergone a successful repair. Doctors are asking women to seek for medical care early enough during labor so that they can also be saved from cancer associated to fistula. Fred Muturi, KTN News.
Nothing.
Now, if you think climbing a mountain is no easy feat, try doing it with absolutely no vision. This is exactly what a group of visually impaired youth did on Saturday when they participated in an annual event organized by the Kenya Society for the Blind with the backing of various corporate sponsors. Trixie Ngado joined them on the mountain climbing expedition and filed this report.
Nothing says handy-capable like hiking the full 2,780-meter height of Mount Longonot completely blind or on crutches. This is what a group of young people accompanied by well-wishers and supporters did today in a bid to raise funds that will go a long way in meeting the many requirements of educating the visually impaired. At 10 a.m., the journey up the mountain began. The hikers of all ages, armed with walking sticks, water bottles, and undeterred determination. And about 2 hours later, Mount Longonot had been conquered.
Most people in this world, I think they have a mentality that persons with disabilities are unable to do things for themselves. Now, climbing this mountain, it's a challenge, and I had to have a guide to help me out. But it doesn't mean that I could not do it myself. I did not go up there, you know, I went up there on foot, and so I did not have any help, like, you know, not using maybe a chopper or anything.
Their looks of elation betraying their feelings of accomplishment. They had made it to the peak despite harrowing physical challenges.
I expected to reach the top so that I can show people, those who think that blind people can't do some things, maybe difficult things, and also to create awareness.
Sometimes you would fall down, then wake up, and should still be courageous to walk along and be determined to climb up to the end of up to the top of the mountain. So I felt like I was also so much encouraged.
The attractive top of the mountain seemed to make the pain and sweat endured worth it all, despite having proven that the physically disabled can, with the right support, participate in physically demanding activities. The road towards physical fitness for many in this community remains long, partly due to the unavailability of government support and special gyms.
I spoke with a visually impaired friend of mine. They were just telling me how expensive it is to access education for blind children, the expensive braille materials and the papers. So it was like, if I would come and mobilize a few friends, we came as a team to help them. I think we cannot solve each and every problem, but we can do some things more. So it's more of, I was just inspired by all those children from probably poor backgrounds. They cannot afford these things. And I thought that if I can mobilize a few people, someone else does the same, at the end we might actually be the difference we always wanted.
Last year, the event raised $1 million shillings for this noble cause through funds donated and the sale of merchandise. This year, however, things are not as promising, since several schools expected to participate were unable to due to the closure of schools. Society for the Blind officials also decried the lack of support from the government, despite it being in existence through an act of parliament.
We expect an annual allocation for their program and administrative cost, but that is not the case. We are forced to look for partners, to raise funds, to look for income-generating activities so that we can achieve our mandate.
However, with the support of corporates such as the Standard Media Group, Faulu Kenya, the IRA, Coca-Cola, Gulf Bank, among others, hope burns bright for this society that is holding the dream that they will continue to conquer literal and proverbial mountains. Trick Zingado, KTN News.
It has been 2 years since terrorists invaded the Westgate Mall in Nairobi's Westlands area, holding hostages and killing 67 people and injuring scores of others. Many families were left devastated with psychological and physical scars that will remain with them for the rest of their lives. However, many survivors are slowly turning their lives around. Najma Ismail visited Rachel Moriah, one of the survivors of the attack, and here now is her story.
Meet Rachel Moriah, a very humble young lady. On the surface, you cannot tell that she has been through a lot in her life. And as she serves her clients, it is hard not to tell that she has difficulty in walking.
2 years ago, Rachel Moriah worked at the Ashley's Beauty Salon inside the Westgate Mall. On September 21st, she was a victim of a terrifying terror attack where 67 people died and scores others were injured. Rachel survived a grenade that was hurled at her. She lost her right foot but lives to tell the story.
That day of the attack, I was feeling like not going to work, but one heart was telling me go to work, the other one was telling me don't go.
Rachel's instinct that she chose to ignore was correct. Something terrible was going to happen that day. The Westgate Mall was attacked by terrorist group Al-Shabaab.
So people started saying that they were thieves. Others were saying it's just the normal thieves who have come to steal at the Barclays that was at the ground floor. After the first shot of the gun was not that loud, but the second one made us so scared. So it was really loud and we decided that to run.
Although she tries to forget the tragedy of that fateful day, her severed foot stands as a daily reminder of her misfortune. Rachel lost her right foot and badly damaged the left one after a grenade was hurled at her. She's lucky that she's able to walk, but with the help of a prosthetic leg.
Waliangalia huu mguu wangu wa right, wakaona inaumia kabisa, basi ikabidi tu nikatwe.
Rachel's life has never been the same, as she is unable to perform the way she used to.
Natamani sana kuvaa high heels, lakini siwezi, nilikuwa navaa kitambo.
But the humility on her face hides her deepest sorrow. Taking each day as it comes, Rachel is back on her feet again and is able to serve her clients at the Ray Raya Beauty Haven, which she manages courtesy of well-wishers donations through the We Are One initiative that was launched during the Westgate attack. Although it was through the most unfortunate incident, her dream of owning a beauty salon has become a reality.
Huwa nashukuru sana wasi complain. Kwa sababu ni wengi walienda na pale kutoka ilikuwa Mungu.
Even though it is hard to eliminate the horror of the Westgate Mall attack from her mind, Rachel says that she forgave the perpetrators and has moved on with her life. Najma Ismail, KTN News.
Alright, so you're watching KTN Weekend Prime and want to take a short break. We'll be back with our discussion. But just in case you're wondering why John Alanamo has been off kilter today, because his team lost.
Yes, by now anybody who's following the Rugby World Cup will know that the Springboks have just lost its history, actually.
That's okay.
But I contend that they are now more dangerous than they were when they entered this. But this is
Why
just
don't you
my
give
opinion.
them the news of what happened yesterday? Who won? Say it. You need to say it.
There's some team that happens to be
England
hosting the World Cup. Yeah.
Let me tell you, John is a depressed man tonight. Oh my God, I can't believe it. Oh my God. He doesn't know what to do with himself. But in the short commercial break, he's going to gather himself,
Yes, I
pick
will.
himself up, and continue with this very auspicious job that we have to do, which is the news. And of course, that discussion, Era of Terror. It's coming up. We'll be taking a look at your views as well. Stay with us.
Stay with us. All right, time now for the other Kenya, and tonight we are having that discussion by the that has been precipitated by the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights report. It was released earlier this week. The title of that report is our hashtag tonight as well, Era of Terror. That, of course, dealing with legacy, what seems to be a continued legacy of extrajudicial killings and alleged enforced disappearances by security apparatus in this country. We have in studio to discuss this at my extreme right the Vice Chairperson of the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights, George Morara. Thanks very much for joining us.
Thanks
and
for
right
having
next
me.
to him from IPOA, the Independent Police Oversight Authority, we've got Tom Kagwe. Thank you very much for joining us as well. I'll just start by taking our attention, directing our attention to our walls right now, our super walls, and the hashtag itself speaks volumes, but perhaps not as much as the names that you were able to collate, George and your team, during the period that you did. 25 people dead and 81 people missing. Right? That's a staggering number by any measure, and in any country. That would be a staggering number, especially out of the circumstances that the KNCHR claims. First question: why did you present this to IPOA ahead of time, ahead of the release of the report, so that the investigations could commence?
John, thank you very much for that question. Actually, let me start by saying we were very clear as the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights that this is a preliminary report. Having said that, I want the viewers to know that as the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights, we've stayed on course on issues to do with terror-related deaths and disappearances since 2011. We've been in constant communication with the other agencies, the relevant agencies that we work with very closely. We sit, for your information and for the information of the viewers, the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights sits on the IPOA board. We've written numerous letters to the National Police Service Commission, to the Ministry of Interior and Coordination of National Government. So again, for us, we don't look at this report. I was joking with Tom before we came here. This is not your classical thing that of what we used to be taught in school, like it's not a Simon Makonde report, born on Monday, then it's dead on Sunday. But it's a process that has involved all the key actors. So just to answer your question directly, we've dispatched this report to IPOA. I don't know whether they have received it. We've sent this report to the Kenya Defense Forces. I don't know whether they have received it. We've sent a copy to the National Police Service Commission, to the National Police Service. And as I said at the beginning, this is part of a process where we've involved these actors. I've carried a whole host of papers here to just show the viewers that this is a process that has been ongoing. We've written to the minister seeking for audience, and where possible, we've had meetings with IPOA and the rest of the agencies. So for me, this is a process that's ongoing, and nobody can say that they don't know what the Kenya National Commission has been doing insofar as highlighting these massive violations, like you say, the 25 dead and the 81 disappeared.
All right, Tom, IPOA, having seen this report, I am guessing that you have seen this report. Is this the biggest chunk of evidence that you've received so far implicating the police that you have oversight of, at least because you deal directly with oversight on the police? Is this the biggest chunk of evidence that you've seen so far, and how are we going about looking into this?
I think one of the most important factors under analysis is that this is not the final report. It is a preliminary report. That's what we've received. Beyond that is that it has been received by the independent policing, not police, oversight authority, and it's being analyzed right now, and therefore our take on it, including one of the recommendations that we investigate the abuses of those who have disappeared, of those who are dead, and those who have allegedly been extrajudicially executed, will have to be analyzed within the authority, in particular by the Directorate of Investigations, Directorate of Complaints and Legal Services, and of course the Directorate for Inspections and Monitoring. We will analyze what we can see. But one of the most fundamental things is that it would have been at least proper for the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights to inform us ahead of the launch of a preliminary report. Usually it is not, maybe it's not within their purview, but it is always proper to inform our authority like ours on even a preliminary, before even they launch it. At least we have a copy, so that we can begin investigations before any evidence or scene of crimes are interfered with.
All right. So what I'm getting here is that the KNCHR did not give you an advance copy of this report.
Yeah, we got a preliminary report once it was launched.
Once it was launched.
Yeah.
Okay, George, I have to throw this back to you. It's a preliminary report.
Absolutely.
The findings, I've gone through this report. The findings, the testimonies are quite shocking. But it is a preliminary report.
Absolutely.
Is it too premature to release evidence such as this that seems to implicate our security agencies when you don't even have the final report? You haven't investigated all of these cases to their conclusion.
I wouldn't say so, John. And for us, there's a reason why we've decided to release this report at this period in time. As I said, since 2011 to now, we've been seized of these kinds of happenings, where we've written numerous letters to the relevant authorities asking them for meetings. Actually, the latest letter that we wrote, covering a broad area of security issues, was to the new coming CS, the retired General Joseph Kanseri, and that was on 29th of May, asking for a meeting. It's not come to pass. We haven't gotten that meeting. We've written, like I said, to the National Police Service Commission. We haven't gotten that meeting. Sometimes I feel, and see, like tonight, I was hoping that we'd also have, I don't know whether you invited them, the police, to sit with us here and respond. If they cannot respond to these issues when we write to them, and as I was saying earlier, and I want the viewers to know this, we've done everything that we could within our powers to highlight these issues. And if then there's no response that seems to come from the relevant authorities, then we have to use other avenues and put it out there, at least as a way of putting a deterrence to these.
All right, I get your point, and yes, we did invite the police. We didn't get a response from them by the time we were going to air. We did invite representatives of the National Police
and
Service.
that speaks a lot to the attitude generally.
It might, but we're not here to try them. But George, the point still remains that perhaps the threshold is what they're looking for in terms of what you've been able to investigate. You are, of course, you are a constitutional body, and you should be working to help the situation. Wouldn't releasing evidence, even at this preliminary stage, make it more difficult to investigate those who perhaps are involved in this, those who perhaps are perpetrating this, and give them a heads up that, hey, look, we've got this evidence about this person and we're coming in this direction, and therefore they'd have time to perhaps even get rid of the evidence that they have.
But I think to assist George,
yeah,
who's been my colleague in the human rights movement, let's not dwell so much on the process. Let's dwell on the content. Before this report, there have been many reports. The Cry of Blood by Kenya National Commission on Human Rights. That time, together with him, I was working with the Kenya Human Rights Commission.
Yeah. There
have been many other reports, and I'll mention them specifically. The report by Philip Alston of February 2009 on he was a UN Special Rapporteur, United Nations Special Rapporteur on extrajudicial executions and forced disappearances and arbitrary arrests and executions. He released a great report, preliminary as it was. You know what the police called it? Bigoted activism by the professor. He spoke to us. He spoke to George. He spoke to me. There has been another report. Philip Waki released a report on what happened in particularly in that time Nyanza province, where police were responsible for over 400 deaths. If we narrow in on the content, because people may want us to dwell on the process, but if we deal with the content, it's very clear. Police, whom you had invited, and they have refused to come. There is a clear rationale over time that they have been committing these issues.
Yes, that's true. But in terms of the content, it's very hard for a lot of people, especially defenders of the police force, to look at the content if the content itself is called into question through matters of threshold of evidence.
I will tell you this: there are true thresholds of evidence. On matters of criminality, it's very clear. It's about reasonable doubt. On matters of such an investigation, it's balance of probabilities. If you want to measure whether on balance of probabilities that Hassan Suleiman Mwayuyu is dead, and Mvumbo is dead, Delawa is dead, Mwasalim is dead, Bonga is dead, balance of probabilities is what actually we should be first thinking about. But if cases are investigated and a criminal prosecution proceeds, then we go to the reasonable doubt. When we do these balances of probabilities, it is crystal clear. Even Philip Alston did not use reasonable doubt. It would be, for me, defeatist to argue that the Kenya National Commission should rely on reasonable doubt. Right now, we are dealing with the balance of probabilities. And on issues, Namu, for you, even as a media house, we listen to you. We listen to your colleague, Ali. When we listen, what we measure is on the balance of probabilities that this person is dead or not. It's clear for us
that
when
these people are...
There is a possibility,
yes.
Not all reports can be, we are not fault-finding. And I would urge the Kenya National Commission not to be fault-finding, but they don't. It's a question of when you look back at the evidence, and let me say this, for Independent Policing Oversight Authority, the board is seized of the matter of enforced disappearances.
Yeah.
We have, and we will be discussing these matters at length in the next 1 month or so, like every other Wednesday, because it seems there is clear evidence from what we can gather so far that people have just disappeared from their homes. Whether they have joined Al-Shabaab, we can't tell. Whether they have disappeared in search of jobs in Dubai, we can't tell. Whether they are dead,
you can't tell, but there are...
John, let me just say something very quickly.
Yeah.
I think, just to add on what Tom is saying, I don't think it's fair and proper for us as a constitutional commission, a state agency. I don't think it's fair for it to appear like we want to fault find with the police and all this. That is not why we are here, really. But I just want to say one of the reasons why we've done what we've done is for a very long period of time, I think our police operates from a very, I don't know, a principle whereby it's, and maybe Tom also likes saying this, hear no evil, see no evil, say no evil. We are not the only people who have raised this. In fact, I remember very well, recently when the president was in Mombasa, he mentioned the issue of this enforced disappearance. It had been brought to his attention. It is very wrong for us as a commission to be turned into a state whereby we are now almost playing a whistleblower role just because our other compatriots are acting as if we are less government than they are.
We are government.
We are together in this, and we should actually work together.
You are government, but the denials aren't just coming from the police. They're coming from as high as the Interior Permanent Secretary, Principal Secretary rather, Monica Juma, who here, right after President Barack Obama left, made a denial about enforced disappearances and extrajudicial killings. On this bulletin, and she's not the only one to have done this. The president's statement seems to be the only one that seems to acknowledge that this seems to be going on. How then do you work as government if at one level there is some level of acceptance, if not even implicit, that this could be going on, and at another level there is a blatant denial of the same?
Sometimes people just watch for the wind, maybe for what the president is doing. And I was actually saying, for example, when we look at the issue of the so-called war on illicit brews and all this,
or corruption,
people actually knew these things were happening. Did they have to wait for the president to say something before they did their work? If we look at what's happening in Mombasa now, Mambo Mihadarati and all the other stuff, did it have to take the president going there to actually say we have a problem for the relevant agencies to act? I'm very encouraged. I don't know what's actually, you've been carrying news about a siege at the Kilindini hub and all this. For me, those
those are examples of what should be the police, the CID should be doing, going in, preventing these crimes before they occur, instead of waiting for them to come here, and then the president is again forced to break the law, go out there in the seas to blow up some vessels and all the other stuff. So I think to a large extent, people have been given jobs by this constitution. They are paid by taxpayers, and they must do what they are paid to do. So it cannot be that people sit and wait. Maybe now that the president has actually said there are those enforced disappearances, we may see a change of heart. Already we are seeing the government saying, let us change tactic. Let us engage and talk with these young people who have gone to Somalia. Let's try to rehabilitate them. We can't always use the hammers and tongs approach to deal with the issues of radical extremism.
All right, Tom, tell me about your engagement with the Interior Ministry with respect to matters concerning the police, and they're being implicated in crimes from as petty as street bribery and conmanship, and we've seen a lot of them in court, to crimes as serious as extrajudicial executions and forced disappearances.
I think, my friend John Allen Nam, you've said it all. I can just say I confirm, or I can say even one word, ditto, that those are happening. But let me begin from, I don't think Monica Juma is a person you want to quote.
She is the Principal Secretary of the Interior Ministry. We have to quote her as a matter of principle journalistically, and she is an authority in that field.
Authority in what?
An authority within the security apparatus. This is something that she's built her experience on.
Let me say it this way. The Independent Policing Oversight Authority has come to the public and opposed even her nomination as Cabinet Secretary in the office of the President. Maybe it passed the media houses, but my chairman, who's my colleague, Mashari Njeru, opposed it. And when he did so on behalf of the Independent Policing Oversight Authority. Because our workings with the Ministry of Interior and Coordination of National Government has been, what should I say? I think we've just hit rock bottom.
So strained, to put it mildly.
You may say those words, but for me right now I can't use diplomacy. When we tried to deal with the, for example, police recruitment of 2014, which we said was full of corruption, favoritism, nepotism, we held a meeting, and it's only that the beauty is that I have never taken an oath of secrecy, and I would never take it anyway. The relationship between Independent Policing Oversight Authority with that particular individual, you cannot have anything to call home about. And when we post her nomination, when Parliament rejected her, we didn't even consider that maybe we were clear and crystal that she cannot, because
so
there are people who we work with in the Ministry of Interior.
Just to jump in for a moment here, there is a problem with the individual, but what is the relationship with the security apparatus? Because the report doesn't just implicate the police, it also implicates the Kenya Wildlife Services, it also implicates the Kenya Defence Forces. Now that isn't part of your purview, but I want to listen to what your relationship is now with the police themselves, the Inspector General, those people. What's your relationship as their oversight body?
Okay, I will say this. That's why I corrected you that we are not Independent Police Oversight Authority.
Policing, sorry.
We are Policing Oversight Authority, which means that any person who's conducting the functions of policing, be it Kenya Wildlife Service. Right now we have cases, one case in Narok, which involves several individuals who are rangers. They didn't know that they are under our purview. Kenya WS, or the Kenya Wildlife Service, if they operate against constitutional limits of policing, we will do what we can.
So this also includes the KDF?
KDF, we have powers over them in particular instances where under Section 33 to Section 35 of the Kenya Defense Forces Act, where they are involved in insurrection and peace work. For example, when they are called in to restore peace, they fall under the National Police Service, and National Police Service falls under us. So even the National Security Council understands this. That's why they ask us to monitor any operation involving police and the Kenya Defense Forces, insofar as they don't violate human rights.
All right, but their involvement, and this has been pointed out in this report, their involvement in matters to do with security, specifically terrorism, has been fairly inward-looking. In that they operate within the boundaries of the country, and some would say in contravention of the act that that gives them force of law. What kind of recommendations have you made? Because this is not the first time that IPOA has been done, and I'll swing over to you, George, in a moment. This is not the first time that IPOA has been seized of this matter. What kind of recommendations have you made to them with respect to that kind of operation?
We make recommendations which are practicable, both to the executive, particularly the ministry you asked me about, and also carbon copy to the National Security Council. I can own this up that we have not finished the report on the military operation because it's still ongoing. When we were asked by the National Security Council to provide oversight on the military police, the Kenya Defense Forces, and in their role when they were doing the operations in Garissa, Lamu, and other places. When we do so, we will make it very public, the recommendations about what should be done to police, to policing duties given to the military. But I can tell you without a blink in my eye that any person or office or service that attempts to do policing work within the purview of our law or the Constitution, particularly Article 244, if they don't operate within the Article 244 provisions and Article 238, which call for professionalism, which call for transparency, accountability, respect for fundamental rights, respect for human freedoms, and all those things, if they don't adhere to those, it is within the purview of IPOA to make recommendations, including investigate, and therefore we recommend prosecutions. That's what we do.
All right, we'll swing back to you. I just want to bring this to George's attention. In past reports, the modus operandi of the alleged perpetrators, be they police or someone else, would be gunshot wounds, those kinds of things that are fairly easily associated with people who are allowed to bear arms or at least have access to arms. But in this report we see hangings, we see strangulation, we see different modes of eliminating people who are either suspected or just picked up off the street, in raising the threshold of your evidence at that point, when it gets to that point of analysis of the manner in which people were killed. How difficult or how easy will this be to tie this to the people that you've already alleged are responsible, who are our security agencies?
John, we have this. You see, we are not talking about phantoms. We are talking about people. We are talking about victims. So we have victims, the ones who have not died. We have victims who have the evidence of the torture they have undergone and all this, and those are the victims that will help us move this process forward. What they have told us, we've recommended again to IPOA, the ODPP, to take up this report. We can link them up with those victims of torture, and then this process can be carried forward so that in a court of law they can then really say what happened to them.
All right, let me just bring Tom in for a moment with respect to evidence again, and this links to what I've just been asking George. When you're investigating the police, who do you employ? Who helps you investigate? Is it the police themselves? And when you're making these recommendations, either to the Kenya Defense Forces, to the government, what happens if they don't respect your recommendations?
I expected that question. We have the Directorate of Investigations within IPOA, headed by a director in charge of investigations, seasoned investigator. And he has a string, because it's a he has a string of investigators, very seasoned people. Some of them are police, some of them come from a human rights background, but according to our act, section 22, we are supposed to train all these investigators on human rights for purposes of understanding the dynamics between victims, remote victims, secondary victims, and also the financiers of that violence.
Yeah.
I will tell you this directly. We investigate as IPOA. We keep evidence as IPOA. We investigate police in a very clear manner that is within the Constitution in terms of fair administrative action. We give them a leeway to also respond. We ask them to come to our offices to record statements.
Yeah.
We have carried out those investigations with regard to victims also, so that they also record statements in witnesses that we may find, and also the police who are culpable, who are potentially culpable. And then once we solidify, we analyze the evidence, and then we recommend to the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions on what is to be done. I can tell you, out of the cases we have taken to the ODPP, out of 10, as a number, just to deal with the number, 9 have been passed for prosecution, and 1 has been returned that we need more evidence.
George, and unfortunately we have to start making our final remarks now. George, as a final remark, people who, perhaps even critics, the police, I'll speak on their behalf at this point, would say that a report like this helps a terrorist agenda because it gives further evidence to allegations that terrorist groups have been making, that certain groups are being marginalized. You can see from start almost to bottom, the victims there are Muslim. The victims there from start almost to bottom are Kenyan, Somali. What would you say to that allegation, that a report like this helps play into a terrorist agenda and gives them even further fuel to recruit more people into an extremist agenda?
John, thank you very much for that question. And very quickly, I'll say one thing. I don't think we are a banana republic. We are a nation governed by the rule of law. I looked at the functions of the National Police Service Commission, the 3 formations, the Kenya Police, the Administration Police, and the Directorate of Criminal Investigations, about 32 functions. Nowhere is it listed that torture, use of excessive force, and forced disappearances is one of the functions of those 3 arms of the National Police Service. On the contrary, they are required to operate under Article 238, the principles espoused there, and Thomas clearly said that. I think the KDF Act is one of the thickest pieces of legislation we have in town.
Yeah.
But I think also looking at this, Section 3 of that Act is very clear, Part C. It also binds them to be operate under the human rights and fundamental freedoms and all, to respect that. So for me, the ones who are saying that this gives the terrorists an opportunity to really then find out our Achilles heel, are trying to tell us that as a country we should suspend the rule of law. We pass these laws ourselves. There is a reason why Chapter 4 is the biggest chapter of the Constitution. Is our history. We've come from a terrible past, the Nyayo House chambers, torture chambers, to what happened during what Tom was saying, the cry of blood and all that, and we cannot go back there. Continuously, we must be a country governed by the rule of law, and killing people through extrajudicial means or enforced disappearances is not a way of really keeping this country safe.
All right. I think on that note, we're going to have to wind it up there. That's a great way to end. Rule of law being the principle that guides all of us, whether police or people within the industries that we are. Thank you very much for joining us, George Morara, and Vice Chairperson, the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights, as well as Tom Kagwe from the Independent Policing Oversight Authority. Yes, I'll remember that one. Of course, we did invite the police to join this discussion, members or representatives from the National Policing Service. They did not respond to our invitation by the time we went to press or got into this live bulletin. We keep that invitation open, considering the damning nature of this report done by a government, a state agency. The news continues in a moment. You can keep your feedback coming through on the hashtag Era of Terror. Yvonne Okwara has been following this discussion. She's going to bring us a summary of what we've been talking about on What's the Point.
So even as we continue to interrogate that report by the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights, a number of things come into focus. One that is important is that the police must not only respond but act on the allegations made by the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights regarding enforced disappearances. 81 missing, 25 killed, and hundreds tortured allegedly under the hand of the police, the security forces, is no mean allegation, and is something that must be acted upon to find out whether indeed, like we said at the beginning of this bulletin, the threshold will be met for evidence against any police officers, or whether indeed there is not enough evidence. But this is something important that the police must act on as soon as possible. The second point tonight is that the rule of law must be upheld. Now, what is clear, very clear, is that the difference between governments and terrorists and suspects and criminals is the rule of law, a law that we all live to abide by. Guilty, innocent rather, until proven guilty, and this applies to all suspects, including very prominent ones who may also be at the ICC at The Hague. That is something that must be granted to all. Finally, how does this affect the war on terror? We must be getting the suspects, gleaning as much information as possible, because the rate at which we're going, we're making Guantanamo Bay in the United States look even better. Now, in case you think this does not affect you, think about a young girl called Kwekwe Mandaza in Kwale. 8 police officers stormed into her house, allegedly looking for her uncle. During the evidence, one of them said she posed a threat by holding a panga. 8 police officers, all heavily armed. Now, this just goes to impunity, and by the way, that matter is still under investigation and the inquest is still ongoing, but it just goes to show you this impunity that the police can continue to have if these instances are not investigated and action not taken where there is enough evidence to prove so. Let me wind up what's the point with this. You all know this saying. First they came for the communists. I didn't speak out because I was not a communist. Then they came for the socialists. I didn't speak out because I wasn't a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionists. I didn't speak out because I was not a trade unionist. They came for the Jews. I didn't speak out because I was not a Jew. Then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak out for me. What will happen the day they come for you under the guise of being a terror suspect? That tonight is the point. This year's Standard Chartered Marathon is expected to attract more participants in the aim of restoring sight to children with preventable eye problems. Elsewhere, Nicholas Korir emerged the winner in the second edition of the Chemususu Half Marathon.
Hundreds of Kenyans turned out to receive free eye checkup and treatment as the 13th edition of the Nairobi Standard Chartered Marathon was launched at Nairobi's Uhuru Park. The marathon is aimed at raising funds for the Seeing is Believing program.
And it is also my pleasure to officially launch the registration of the Standard Chartered Marathon.
The organizers of the tournament stressed on the need to have more tournaments aimed at helping people.
We have restored sight to hundreds of thousands of people across the world. Here in Kenya, we have restored sight to over 8,000 children.
This morning, it was a pleasure to meet a young man who, up until the age of 4.5 years old, was blind. But now he can see and he's in school. And that is what Standard Chartered has been doing for the people of Nairobi and the people of Kenya.
The Standard Chartered Marathon will be held on 25th of October. In Baringo County, Nicholas Korir won the second edition of the Chemususu Half Marathon, clocking a time of 1 hour, 7 minutes and 37 seconds. He was awarded 150,000 Kenya shillings and a medal from Baringo Senator Gideon Moi. Geoffrey Agon and Peter Some finished second and third respectively. Elsewhere, the Kenya Bodybuilding Federation held a Mr. and Miss Kenya Bodybuilding Championship at the Nyayo National Stadium. The competition, which marked the end of 3-day fitness expo, was aimed at sensitizing Kenyans on the importance of exercise.
Thank you. Most of people do spend a lot of money treating these uncommunicable diseases. While they can prevent these diseases by exercising.
The winner in men's category will walk away with 100,000 Kenya shillings. Abula Ahmed, KTN Sports.
And do stay with us right here on KTN to get the whole story and all the latest updates on the Rugby World Cup. We will keep you updated with all that's going on, the wins, the losses, the heartbreaks, and the triumphs. Now, Paul Migai is the winner of the Hillcrest 50th Anniversary Golf Tournament. The youngster beat more than 100 participants to emerge the winner at the Sigona Golf Club. Participants of the tournament are calling for more golf tournaments in the country to help develop the sport.
Golf Moments, brought to you by Viceroy, Kenya's #1 premium brandy.
More than 100 participants turned out for the Hillcrest 50th Anniversary Golf Tournament at the Sigona Golf Club in Nairobi. Paul Muigai was named the overall winner of the tournament after accumulating a total of 43 points. Milo Muse closed in on the second position, while Naftari Kibuku was third. Kai Skan won the juniors category, as Esther Njeri and M. Esani closed in on the first 9 and second 9 respectively.
We want to be participating in this kind of events because it is one of the sports, if you look very keenly, has become quite active.
With Kenya having fallen behind in the standards of golf in the continent, some of the golfers who took part in the tournament feel that more tournaments should be introduced in the country to help in the growth of the sport.
We need to get to that level here. Affordable courses, not necessarily the signature, but a place where a Kenyan can play golf reasonably cheaply and regularly. And we need to inculcate golf in our youth. There are people out there in the villages, in homes, who've got a capacity to play golf.
The golfers also feel more attention should be given to youngsters as the country bids to develop the future champions. The tournament...
Okay, so we've come to the end of our bulletin. John, some feedback?
Yeah, we've got Joseph Chien, who says that report doesn't advance any terrorist agenda. The report should be looked at objectively by key stakeholders, but there's also responses that look at things from the opposite point of view. Cliff Njuguna says a terrorist is a person who can do anything to kill the innocent. KDF are trained for such. Give them space.
However, this is a report on the police.
Well, yes.
Not KDF per se.
Not KDF per se, but security agencies, and the subject is extrajudicial executions. Not all of the people who are in this report are suspects, or even faintly suspected of doing anything wrong. Some of the people from the report, what the report says, were picked off the street and have never been seen again alive. Muhyiddin Ibrahim says the police that are supposed to protect us are the same ones killing, torturing and disappearing our kids. And Mutsi MD says if IPOA and KNCHR are frustrated yet they're in their government agencies, how about poor individuals fighting for their rights? Final one, Philip Sadera says, again, that's the only way to weaken these terrorists. Don't you guys see that radicalism is a threat to world peace?
It is. I might want to add, and there was an SMS that said, we're peaceful since. Some of these reports have been since 2011. I would remind you that we've had several attacks since 2011. Westgate, Mpeketoni, Garissa, where hundreds were killed. Look, it is not the silver bullet in terms of completely eradicating that. Even with Mungiki, with the extrajudicial killings that took place there, we still have Mungiki thriving in certain places. That's all. But I think we have to wind up now.
Oh yeah, definitely a discussion that we'd want to continue having on KTN, and we will have this discussion once again because it is such a pertinent issue. But that's where we'll leave it tonight. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. My name is John Allen Namu.
I'm Yvonne Okwara Matole. Good night.